Okay, so let's see if we can hammer out some trialectics. Trialectics.
Let's do this thing.
We're keeping it simple. One-on-one. We're doing new. This is a new economic system started by. Who came up with this?
Well, yeah, it was the one that I'm doing is sort of my own, but Brian O'Connell is kind of a mastermind, I think, in certain logic systems and so forth. So he has he inspired me about 3 years ago in like understanding the political landscape better, and how it could be integrated with more kind of integrative theories and so forth. And so, there's a lot of parallels with what I'm presenting here and with what Brian O'Connell is presenting. And it's the logic system itself is sort of coming from this Oscar fellow from South America. And we've been talking recently to some mathematicians about it. And it maybe isn't perfectly sound, like as a logical system, but the kind of principles seem pretty good, and they could probably be augmented to be more logically sound, I suppose.
By logically sound, do you mean making the system sort of idiot-proof to people that would try and manipulate it, or?
What he kind of meant by it is that the kind of foundations, or like the actual logics themselves are not really necessarily compatible with formal logic or even dialectical logic. And this idea is supposed to be a logical system that sort of includes but transcends the kind of dialectical and formal logical processes, and he doesn't think it's exactly...
Okay, can you explain dialectical and trialectical and all these logic systems as they sort of relate to, because this is supposed to be an economic system, yeah?
Yes.
So I think, like, when I think economic system, I'm not thinking logic system, so what exactly does that mean?
The relationship between the two.
Your screen.
Well,
there we go.
Sorry. I guess like, I think you're right. I don't think that it has to be perfectly sound to still be a pretty solid economical system. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it can have some logical fallacies as a logical structure and still work pretty well as an economic system. But it was originally envisioned kind of as a spiritual logic in some sense. Again, yeah, that's really kind of what it is. So it's the idea, you can put it in different ways, sort of the head, the heart, and the mind, the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost. But so like where dialectics was sort of a process of making dualities, like, a thesis, the antithesis, and then a synthesis. There's always this fight between the two. Right. Taking place. Even after the synthesis, you're creating a new antithesis, which is the new thesis. So there's never kind of a holism that's sort of embracing the two at the same time. That roughly is my perspective on dialectics. So it's kind of always creating these polarities, and when it plays out in the world, if it's taken as sort of a real way of thinking about the world, then you're kind of setting up this kind of opposition with something else always. And it's not coming from a non-dual perspective.
Okay,
maybe.
So I think I saw a speech by Dennis Kucinich the other day on C-SPAN or something like that, and he was saying this dialectical perspective is almost, it's madness. Like, we're in this competition with China, right? But what does that even mean? Like, if we ever defeat China economically or anything, then we can't live without it. It's almost like our economic system is as like screwed up as our view of the environment, where we say, oh, if we get rid of all these predators of ourselves, then we'll be richer for it. And it just leads to collapse every single time if you actually do defeat the enemy, right? So it has to be perpetual fighting, and then if either side actually gets what they want to do, then the system collapses. If you're not seeing it as a cooperative effort, sort of.
Yes, yeah. And like, you can there's a lot of like theories about how Illuminati and so forth. And I'm not going to get into that because I don't take it that serious. But really, like like that idea is often one of becoming the most powerful, right? And
right.
just as a principle, it's like becoming that one which there is no other, in a sense, that is the dominator of the planet, or something like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just as a principle, you can kind of see how that idea is potent within a dialectical system. Like the very top of the pyramid, that eye of a pyramid is in utter control of the entire pyramid, as
right.
it were.
Okay, so would do you think we just summed up pretty well, like the main flaws with, I guess, what are the blatant flaws with, say, our capitalistic system? Is it that it is dualistic and just inherently unstable because it can't see itself in a holistic manner?
So a few things that I was personally, my take on it. There's the sort of fundamental streamlining of putting the economic system through sort of the lowest common denominator. So if we use sort of the core, the heart, and the head again, it's like making economics sort of stream through the resources and not really take serious the heart or the head, mm-hmm. like the mental realms and the moral realms. It's saying everything is kind of control over the resource base, kind of. And so, I mean, again, obviously there is economies for, morality and for good thinking systems to some extent within the system, but it's being pathologized sort of by being force fit into an economic system that is too narrow, in my opinion, if that makes sense. No? So, like, with capitalism, we have, three branches of government, right? We have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And again, using the trialectical system, that might parallel something like, the core, the heart, and the head, where the head is the executive, the heart is the legislative, and the core is sort of the judicial. So it's making the laws that what can be done and what can't be done.
Right.
Now, if the economic system is singular, and in a sense, within a global system of playing upon opposites, then you kind of have this streamline of that's not the right word, but you have this kind of pushing of the economy through just the kind of base resources and not really taking. Yeah, I'm not expressing this very well.
So basically, it doesn't have any of the heart or the mind stuff operating in it in a real way that has any power, and so it's just, can we do this and does it make money? Sort of.
Roughly, yeah.
Okay. So, and then I guess let's contrast it with, so let's just go into what Trialectics is if somebody didn't watch that primer video that you made.
Sure.
So or start at the top or the bottom, whichever one makes more sense.
Okay, and do you want me to go a little bit more into the history of economy first, or do you think it's okay just to jump in? Probably most people know about it, eh?
Yeah, I think we could probably link to stuff if they really want to figure it out.
Sure.
Or if you want to provide some links, we can put it in the video so that this thing can be shortish.
Sure. So, starting with maybe the resource level, and there's a book called Web of Debt that's really quite good, and it explains why a purely resource-based economy probably wouldn't function. Now, I don't want to get into it because it's kind of a laborious conversation to explain all the details. Maybe I should though. What do you think, Kurt?
I guess so. A resource-based economy as
Purely like a strictly resource-based economy.
and by resource we mean something like what the Venus Project is suggesting. Like we just scientifically evaluate what we can do in a sustainable way, or what does that mean?
Well, so yeah, what I mean by that is that again, just having sort of like a singular system of it's not really economics, but a singular system of sort of trade and mutual agreement. Again, I think would be sort of subject to a lot of the problems that we see here, in the way, for example, of corruption coming back into the system, of what else could we say, like of not valuing as much potentially other modes of being.
So I guess what I mean, as a way of boiling this down, a materialistic economy is going to be unstable and fail because it doesn't appreciate anything that doesn't. It has a hard time appreciating things that don't actually exist, like art or culture or outside the box thinking. Like there's not much value on that because unless it's producing a tangible resource, and the only way to get our economy to do that is to basically force people to it through sort of laws or whatever, community agreements, but it's like an uphill fight for an artist or somebody that's trying to do something that doesn't generate profit or wealth or whatever. Is that...
Yeah, absolutely. Like Ken Wilber, he's an integral philosopher. He talks about the idea of flatland, and it's sort of again, there's like very, very important principles I think within the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project, and like I don't want to undermine any of that. Like Jacques Fresco and so forth. He seems like a brilliant visionary and like the layoutness of his cities, and I think that stuff's extraordinary. But this notion of flatland is one where we're not including sort of the spectrum of consciousness, the sort of developmental component of our being. And so, like for just one quick example would be that it like over time, we could probably implement something like a Venus Project, and that's kind of part of the theory. But people start at kind of like belongingness needs and survival needs and self-esteem needs and so forth, and you need to kind of move through that process to be able to even be a person that self-actualizes themselves, like is interested in sort of abundance and superabundance and giving and this sort of thing, arguably. And so, like, the kind of notion of just being okay with not having any sort of stable resources oneself, that is to say, like, you don't have your own video camera, it's all shared and so forth. I think that's in some extent like a kind of a developmental trait that it takes some time to step into, maybe. What do you think?
With our current society, yes, it does seem like we have to find our way out of the woods, so to speak, because it's so diluted as a culture. But if we synergistically created new political systems, new energy systems, new educational systems, all at the same time, I think within a generation you would have a group of people that their environment would shape it so that their development would start what we would see to be a very advanced level. They would still go through stages, but stuff that we would consider to be like morally developed would be sort of like where they start from, and they might not have, say, the wisdom of our generation that sort of had to fight an uphill battle to get to see abundance and compassion and cooperation